I am Brad Thrasher. I'm a pediatric endocrinologist, and I'm at the University of Louisville. We have a lot of logos here. So we're the University of Louisville, Norton Children's Healthcare, the Wendy Novak Diabetes Center, Christensen Family Sports and Activity Program. So that's a mouthful, but we're kind of all one group with multiple branches, if you will. So we're very excited. I was very excited when Kellen reached out. Some of y'all know that I am a Tennessean, that I grew up outside of Chattanooga. And then I worked there until I took the job here last year. So I still bleed orange, even though I'm in a blue state. And I still wear my Tennessee stuff to work when we win because, I made the joke at football season, there's really no rivalry between Tennessee and Kentucky. It's really just a guaranteed win for Tennessee these days, even though we're still terrible. So there we go. And I even have an orange lunchbox that I'm looking at right now. But anyways, one of the big reasons that brought me here was the sports research and activity program. So just a little bit about me. Like, I don't have diabetes. I'll share that with you, but I was exposed to diabetes at an early age when I was a kid because I have family members who do have diabetes. So, I saw them living with, we call it the burden of diabetes, and just how just day-to-day variations, just can affect blood sugar so much. And, I firmly believe that we have better treatments now than say we did, 20 or 30 years ago, but it's still perfect, or it's still not perfect in any stretch of the imagination. And one issue that I think we all struggle with is when it comes to sports and diabetes, that's just still just a huge burden because everybody reacts just a little differently to it. So one of the things that we're part of the research team here that is kind of looking into how can we help children and teenagers, heck, even young adults with living with diabetes, still do everything they want to do at the highest level, and just, try to make it work. So that's kind of why we're here, what I'm doing here, and all that jazz, and a little bit about me. But I'm going to turn it over to Eric, one of my friends and colleagues here, who works with me, or we work together, I should say, in the research center. He's the lead nutritionist and diabetes educator. And Eric he's told me it's okay for I can share that he does live with diabetes. He was diagnosed at age 9. And Eric has already lived an amazing life. He's probably done more than I'll ever do in my life when it comes to travel and whatnot. I mean, the guy hitchhiked in Vietnam, which is crazy. But he's lived an extraordinary life with diabetes. So he's very, very inspiring. So I would love for y'all, he's going to share your story. So if you're not inspired by him, something's wrong, but it'll be good. It'll be good. And then when he's done, then we're going to talk more about the research program and show you some pictures and maybe even walk you around. So yeah, so thank you for having us. This is such an honor.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the introduction. So as Dr. Thrasher was saying, my name is Eric, registered dietitian here at the Wendy Novak Center. And like you said, I have type 1 diabetes. I was actually diagnosed at age 6. So don't be cutting years off.
Yeah. Whoa, yeah.
But I've been diagnosed for almost 23 years. So I've been living with this day to day. And, even from a young age at 6, I've always prescribed to the philosophy that there's nothing that I physically can't do except make my own insulin. So whatever I've wanted to do in life, I know that there are steps that I have to put in place because of diabetes, but there's absolutely nothing that stops me from doing anything because of diabetes. And just a little bit about myself and kind of like the awesome adventures that I've been a part of. I've always been active throughout my life, and hello there. Always been active throughout my life and have always tried to live a healthy, active lifestyle. In high school, I played baseball. Wasn't good enough to play in college and found a love for adventure sports. So in college, I got into more outdoor adventures like rock climbing, kayaking, and this took me all over the country. I spent weeks away from service in the deep woods of Wyoming, doing a lot of climbing and camping there. And actually had a really awesome chance to stand on top of the Grand Teton, which was 15,000 feet just about. So that was really cool. And that one of my biggest adventures was with my wife and I. We took 2017, the whole year, and we traveled around the world for 8 months consistently. We were out of the year, which it was nuts. It was exciting. It was terrifying sometimes, but some of the best experiences we had on that. And you know, we went to 23 different countries. We took over, we lost count, but we tracked it. It was around 22 flights. And we covered over 20,000 something miles and circumnavigated the globe. So it was awesome. But we were gone and out of the country for a consistent 8-month period of time. And a couple of the really, really cool adventures from that, we hiked to the base camp of Mount Everest. And that, you know, we didn't climb to the top of it, but we were at the bottom of it. And that was a feat in and of itself. That was about 10,000 feet of elevation gain over a 10-day hike. And the base camp itself is 17,000 something feet. So there were a lot of factors to involve there. One, we had to carry all of our supplies. We had a guide and a porter with us, but we were still carrying a lot on our backs. Managing blood sugars with that, maintaining good temperature of insulin and supplies. So there was a lot of factors around that. And we can jump more and talk about that. But that was a really, really amazing experience. And after the base camp, we then went and did a safari in Africa, which in and of itself was really awesome. But again, we were out in the bush for 2 weeks at a time. So we were away from cell phone service, away from a hospital. So in all of these adventures, the thing that, like the recurring thing is that we were away from like medical service and away from pharmacies. So we really had to rely, my wife and I, on ourselves, our abilities, the supplies that we had brought and how we prepared to keep us safe in a lot of situations. And there, a lot of things went wrong. You know, we lost meters were broken. I actually had to change my management 4 times. I have an Omnipod, and about 2 months in, while we were in Cambodia on a removed island, the Omnipod PDM died. It decided to break. Really, really opportune time. The Dexcom also broke, so there was a period of time where I was doing shots and finger poking. Got the pod back again, and then it was lost in Switzerland for about 3 months. So I had to switch from injections to pump to injections, all in that stretch of like 8 months. And, you know, a lot of the things that we experienced would have been enough to make us stop. You know, like, let's get a ticket home. This is not worth it. This is crazy. But it was through the planning and the preparation that we did ahead of time that we were able to say, no, this is something we want to do. We love this. And because of the work we put in ahead of time, we're able to continue to do it. And like I said, I just always think back to that. Nothing can stop me from doing what I want to do. But in order to make this possible, it really came down to like 3 things. And I want to share that with you guys. And they all start with P's to make it easy to remember. And that's planning, preparation, and possible. So the planning was huge. We took, before this trip, a whole year to plan everything. We thought all scenarios, all situations, like what could go wrong? What happens if we lose all the insulin? What happens if the pod breaks? What happens if our bags get stolen? So we thought of all of these situations and planned for this entire year. So way more scenarios than I want to talk through right now. We'd be here for 3 hours, 4 hours, but we took a lot of planning to know what was going to be a backup if something went wrong. The preparation side of it, that I'd say is different than the planning and something that I'd been doing since I was 6 years old. So I had been preparing for this in how I manage my blood sugars, understanding my body, and just getting really good at my management so that if something went wrong, I'd be able to be flexible, adaptable, and I could just continue what we were doing just in a different way. Like when my pod broke, I had to switch right to injections. There was no time to like figure out what I needed to do, what was going to be the next step. I just knew, okay, I'm doing injections now, and went right to that because in order to prepare for this, in that year of planning, I also spent 3 months doing finger sticks and injections, even though I had a pod and a Dexcom, just to prepare for what could happen. What if the pod broke? What if the Dexcom broke? Which they both did. So I'm really glad I took those 3 months to prepare for that and kind of exercise those bad scenarios. And then the last one is possible. And I think this is the most important one because it's a mindset. So throughout my life, like I said, I've known that I can do whatever I want, and it was possible. And I think that this is the most important aspect to doing anything with diabetes or life in general, because if you don't think that it's possible, that's where it stops. That's where it ends. There's no planning, there's no preparation. So you have to believe that what you want to do is possible. And when my wife and I had this idea, it sounded insane. It was crazy. It sounded insane. We did a little bit of traveling in 2016 before this trip. And we were like, man, this would be so cool. We love this. We want to travel more. What if we did it for a whole year? And it kind of just started as like this fun, crazy idea that eventually we did more research and snowballed into this actual plan. But had we just thought, no, we can't do that, that's not possible, you know, we never would have progressed. There never would have been the future research, the future planning. So mindset and relationship to diabetes is so important to anything you want to do in life, whether it's, you know, traveling, being good at sports, being good at school, it doesn't matter. It all has to start with knowing that what you want to do is possible and knowing that diabetes is the way to get you there. So good management with diabetes, I really think, is the thing that has allowed me to do everything that I've done and want to do in the future. But going back to, you know, some of those other crazy things, I want to talk a little bit about the Everest trip and kind of how challenging that was, because that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And then doing that with diabetes was insane. So talking about a little bit of the particulars of that, and then we could open it up for questions and go on to talking about the sports program. But the way that we made that possible is my wife and I, we each carried 6 months or 3 months of supplies in each of our backpacks. So we backpacked this whole thing. We didn't have carry-ons. It was all on our backs. So that way, if one of our bags got stolen or, you know, the straps broke and it fell down a, you know, mountain or whatever, we had another 3 months of supplies on the other person's back. So we had that amount of supplies with us at all times. Before we left to go on this big trek, we knew that we were going to need some carbs because I was probably going to go low. You know, we were hiking like 8 to 9 miles a day up some pretty crazy terrain. So while in Kathmandu in Nepal, we stocked up and bought, it was around 8,000 grams of carbs in the form of, it was mainly granola. We also bought some cookies and snacks and things like that. But we had a guide who was with us at all times, and this guide was awesome. He'd tell us every day, he's like, okay, first we go like this, then we go like this, then we go like this, and then we go like this. So he could help, he understood enough about diabetes that I needed to plan. So that way I could adjust my insulin in the morning for breakfast. I know if we were going flat for a long time, I could maybe do most of a bolus. If I knew that we were going up for the beginning of the day, I would reduce my bolus. So he was really awesome in preparing for what we were doing that day. We had a porter that carried a lot of our supplies, but in this time, my Dexcom was not working. So this is one of those periods of time where the Dexcom wasn't working. So I was pricking my finger probably like 10 to 15 times a day while we were hiking. And just through the years of experience, I've gotten really good at pricking my finger while doing anything else. So it didn't really stop us or hinder us at all. I just whip it out and prick it and we'd be going and good to go. But a couple factors, one was the activity. So I had to reduce all of my insulin basically in half, but still had a lot of lows. And one thing that we did not foresee, this is kind of a funny story, the granola that we bought was actually uncooked oatmeal, which we didn't realize when we bought it. So I was breathing super heavy and then having to shove dry oatmeal in my mouth. It was the worst. It was awful.
Yeah.
I will never complain about glucose tabs again. um, so a lot of lows, but also the temperature, it got obviously really cold. We were in the alpine tundra, which means that the elevation was so high and it was so cold that nothing could grow. So it was basically just rocks and like this mossy stuff. So I kept everything on my body. So all of my insulin, and we carried about 6 months of insulin at a time with us. So I carried that in my body, and then Emily had some in her jacket to keep the body temperature close to us, or use the body temperature to keep the insulin from freezing. I also kept my meters and my pod in there. So I looked like, I don't know, like a CIA guy or something, like this huge vest, stuff just sticking out everywhere. And some days it was really warm, so that wasn't a huge factor. But at nighttime, where we were sleeping, they were called tea houses. They were probably uninsulated as far as I know, but we were sleeping in sleeping bags with no heat. So again, had to sleep with everything in the sleeping bag with me: insulin, pump, meters, flashlights, you know, anything with a battery in it. So our sleeping bags were pretty bulky too. But I didn't experience any altitude sickness, luckily. But it was a lot of finger sticks. It was a lot of stopping because of lows. And we eventually made it there. You know, I'm really lucky and glad to say that there wasn't any huge catastrophic thing that happened to give us a really awesome story, other than that we made it to Everest Base Camp. It was just, again, having the experience of doing diabetes and knowing what I needed to do if something happened. We were able to continue to roll on when, you know, I did have a low, and we just treated it, waited, and then continued going. So that was probably one of the craziest experiences of that trip. And it was, yeah, it was really awesome. And now, having done that, I have a confidence that I can do anything. But it was that that philosophy of knowing that I could do anything with the right preparation and planning that led us to being able to make it to Everest Base Camp, or make it around the world, or really do anything. So I think if I'm talking to anybody with diabetes, I always want to convey the message that you can do anything that you want to, as long as you know your body, work on your management, work on the fundamentals, and you prepare and you plan in the way that you need to. There's absolutely nothing that you can't do. And diabetes will never stop you from doing anything. So I love meeting other people with diabetes and conveying that message, because that's how I've lived and how I want to continue to live my life. So no matter what it is, you can do it. I promise you can. So that's kind of my story.
Cool. Very cool. Well, if it's okay with everybody out there, we thought we might just save questions to the end, if that's all right with you, Kellen, and just go ahead and just talk about the activity program here and kind of move forward with that. And Eric is being, I mean, his story is amazing, right? He's the only person I know that's made it to Everest Base Camp, you know, with diabetes. But he's also didn't share with you that before the pandemic started, this guy was out somewhere, was it Utah or Colorado, climbing frozen waterfalls. So when he says that, like, the only thing he can't do is make insulin, he actually has a T-shirt that he wears that says that. So Eric is truly, you know, a motivator, life coach, and pretty much what I say, the heart and soul of our activity program. So with that said, thank you for sharing, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let us tell y'all, or let us share with you more about the program. So give me just a minute, because I have to share my screen. Oh. What am I doing wrong? Sorry, guys. Share screen. There it is.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Can everybody see the screen that says diabetes and activities you can climb? We got thumbs up. Thank you. And to the young man eating Chick-fil-A, you're making me really hungry right now. So kudos to you, man. All right, so let's get this thing going. So here, pretty much in our activity center, we do live by the motto, you can do anything with proper, planning and preparation. Come on. There we go. There we go. Now we're moving. All right. So just a little bit on diabetes and activities. And I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but as Eric was saying, there was many variables he had to plan for when he was climbing Everest or, whatever adventure he goes on. It's not, somebody that doesn't live with diabetes who, just grab your bag and go. You have to think about the exercise. Aerobic's going to be treat your blood sugars a little differently than anaerobic exercise. And when it comes to the world of sports, a lot of time it's a mixture of the two exercises together, which makes the variables even more challenging. Our environment plays a picture in it as well. Is it hot? Is it cold? On hot days, you're more likely to have lows just because of better blood flow going through the body. You got to think about, when did I last eat? How much insulin do I have on board? There's just a lot of variables that go into managing diabetes, and then, putting that in place with sports or activity. So because of all these variables and the challenges that it brings, was kind of born the Christians and Family Sports and Activity Program here in Louisville. And so our goal is to provide clinical care to individuals and families through patient-centered and community education and clinical research. And we focus on providing insights into your blood glucose management to overall improve your health, safety, well-being, athletic performance, so that every child and young adult with diabetes can pretty much feel like they're thriving in whatever they choose to do. And our team is made up of many different players. So we have endocrinologists, we have exercise physiologists, we have nurses, dietitians, educators, the works. We're quick to tell people we're not a conditioning program. Like, we don't have trainers on board that are saying, let's do this workout on this day, this workout on the next day. We're more partnering with you. You tell us what your life is, what your lifestyle is. Let us kind of see your numbers, what your food regimen is, all that kind of stuff, and then we'll make adjustments that way. So we're not necessarily training. We're trying just to partner with you to make your diabetes management better. And then here's just kind of a picture of our team. So you have diabetes educator, nutritionist extraordinaire up there at the top, Mr. Eric Davenport, and then Tim McCade's next to him. That is one of our exercise physiologists. And then Christy King's there in the middle. She's another exercise physiologist. And then you have myself and Dr. Cupper Wintergerst there at the bottom as the endo docs that are involved in the program. So we come up with individualized plans for every patient, because like maybe I said it earlier, I don't know, but the way everybody reacts to diabetes and exercise is different. It's not it's not like one size fit all type of a program. So we really want to look to see what activity you're participating in, how dedicated you are to the activity. Some people want to play just for leisure and friendship, and then we have other people that are, I'm going to play at the University of Louisville and be the starting quarterback someday. So their mindsets are a little different, and those individuals, work out a lot harder than most people. So we want to kind of figure out where you're coming from, and there's a lot of variables that go, into diabetes and exercise, but the two big variables that we really try to focus on is your nutrition and your insulin plan. And that's what I was trying to, I should have highlighted here. I apologize, in the main variable section there. So that's kind of what we're focusing on here. And with that, you're probably thinking, well, Lord, I don't want to be, just regimented and be put in a box and not be able to do what I want to do. We do offer flexibility. So this is a breakfast program for one of our athletes in the program. She plays basketball. And we gave her 5 different options. And you're probably looking at that and being like, holy cow, that's crazy. But remember, she's in college. She's not waking up, making meals, and all that kind of stuff. She told us, what was realistic, and we're trying to make it work in her life, working with her. So, those are her options there. And, if I was still in college and could eat like that, that would be pretty cool. But life goes on. But we try to make it fit with what you're realistically going to do. We're not going to give you a plan that you're going to fail at. We want you to be successful. And we do this for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and do give multiple options there, so it's not, completely regimented. And then this is kind of just our visit description. So when our patients that we see, all of them can participate in the program if they want to. And we ask them to come for the first visit. It's, a couple of hours where basically we just walk through your life. Tell me what your sports are, tell me what your habits are, tell me like what your diabetes management is like, and kind of what your expectations and goals are. How can we partner together to be more successful with this? And then after a conversation, then we bring them to the lab, and we have them run on a treadmill. We have them get on an InBody so we can kind of see their body fat distribution and kind of all that fun stuff. Kind of put them through some exercise tests just to kind of see where they're at. Our exercise physiologists, they're looking at just a bunch of different, I want to say just metabolic parameters to see if there's any changes that, our body's making as we improve glucose control for kind of research purposes. We give people Fitbits because we want to monitor their activity and nutrition. So we ask them to take a 3-day period where they log everything they eat very religiously during that time frame. Keep the Fitbit on them so we can kind of see what they're doing. And then most of them wear Dexcom, so we look at their Clarity apps, but if they're not, then we ask them to check blood sugars very, very frequently so we can kind of see what data we have going on there. And then we let them go, and they go kind of live their life for a couple of weeks, and we bring them back. And then we kind of just review all that data with them. We look at what their nutrition's been, where their blood sugars have been, what their activity levels were, and then we come up with a plan as to, let's start with this and see if we can make, your glycemic control better. We kind of, we say, we want you to have more lake waves than tidal waves when it comes to your diabetes management. And then this is kind of some of the equipment that we have. So like we have kind of the full lab here. So the treadmill that you see in the bottom right corner, I kid you not, it's the biggest treadmill I've ever seen in my life. And when this building was built, they actually built the building around the treadmill, meaning that we're on the 7th floor. They took a crane, they set the treadmill in, and they truly built it around it. You have to take a step ladder to get on this treadmill. It's like an Olympic-sized treadmill. It's really cool. But then we have other equipment as well. You see the exercise bikes and the InBodies, and we have the weights. And if you look really closely behind the wall, or look at the wall where the weight rack's at, you will see Eric Davenport back there doing his one-handed push-ups, or pull-ups, I should say. That's not a push-up, a pull-up. And he does this every day. He doesn't think anybody watches him, but Eric sneaks in here multiple times a day just to get his pull-ups in so he can improve his climbing.
Or is it a well-timed photo? We'll never know.
We'll never know. We'll never know. But after we have our patients go through all that, we come up with their individualized plans, which, we give to them, and then we encourage them to share with their coaches and their trainers so they're on board as well and kind of know what to expect. And these are just some little tips that we pretty much tell all of our patients, about just checking blood sugars before, during, and after strenuous activity. Follow whoever your care team is, follow their recommendations, work together, be a partner there, be mindful about, what your activity is going to be. And then, with the summer coming and it being hotter, stay hydrated because getting dehydrated on hot days too can definitely affect a lot of blood sugar. So just little tips there. And then I thought I would end our mountaintop by kind of looking at a wrestler that we had in the program who was very committed to wrestling, pretty good wrestler. And before he came to our program, he would tell us that he was just having a lot of variabilities, that when he would start, he would always go high, and then he would have lows when it was over with. So at first he was starting to eat less carbs, and then he was reducing his insulin because the lows that he was having after the event, and just kind of all over the map. So we worked with him, and we came up with a plan of where we said, let's eat a consistent meal before the event. Take your full insulin because you're having your catecholamine response there. His adrenaline's just always pumping him up. Give him his insulin. But then when the match is over, let's eat again to get some more carbs, protein, and fat. But let's take less insulin at that time. And where we got him at was here. This is another, just kind of his Dexcom blurb before, and you can see that it's not perfect. We still have some time there above range, but we've stopped the lows that he was having, and he's definitely having more time in range during his activity. So, that's kind of our overall goals there. So again, it's never perfect, but we're wanting more lake waves than tidal waves. So with him, we were able to achieve that. So that was a good success. And then that is kind of our victory lap. And that's kind of our diabetes and activities here at the University of Louisville in a nutshell. So with that being said, we thank y'all for listening. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please, we're here.
Would we be okay to open it up for some questions?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. And then anybody that has a question, you have the option to unmute yourself in the screen. So please feel free to jump in anytime and ask any questions that you have.
Do you all work with patients remotely at all for people that aren't local?
We don't. At this time, it's just for our patients here in Louisville.
Gotcha.
Or being seen at Louisville, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the goal, is to hopefully expand one day with telehealth, but we're just not there yet.
Sure.
I'm curious how, Eric, since you only took 6 months of supplies, how in the world did you get all of those other 6 months of supplies delivered to wherever you were?
Yes, I left that out. So that was a good plan that we had with my parents. So in order to get this amount of supplies, we basically had 6 months up front, and then that's what we took with us. And then the other 6 months came while we were traveling. And I showed my parents, instructed them how to package it up so it fit in our backpacks. And then we actually met them in Morocco. So they took a trip. We met them, they met us, and then we basically exchanged. They gave us that extra 6 months of supplies that we then took with us so that we could continue traveling. Yeah. And the goal was to go for one entire year, but September hit and we decided it was time to come home, and Emily and I, we actually got married at that point. So yeah, the goal was for 1 year. We cut it a little bit short, but we had enough supplies that we could have gone for that long. And in order to get that amount of supplies up front, we did what was called a vacation override with my insurance company. This is something that they'll make accommodations for people studying abroad. So normally you can only get 1 to 3 months at a time, but they'll give you 6 months up front of Dexcom supplies, pump supplies. So that's what we did to get that amount of supplies. And then I worked with my endocrinologist at the time, and she also prescribed Lantus so that I could have that backup. So I always had enough Lantus to last as if I didn't have a pump. So in case the pump went bad, I had that backup. And during that 3 months, the year leading up to it, where I was just doing injections and the finger pricks, that kind of let us bank a little bit on the Dexcom and pump supplies as well. So that's how we were able to get all of that supplies up front.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Like I said, a lot of thought and planning went into this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you got home, like, how did that diabetes management look in the reverse? You had been doing it with such a high level of activity for so long.
Right. You know, thinking back on it, it was so crazy because we came back and then we got married in 2 weeks. So we've been doing a lot of planning, like the leading up to it while we were abroad. So to be honest, when I think back to that, when we got back, it was mainly just the craziness of getting ready for a wedding. So I can't imagine it was great, but because there was still a lot of craziness going on in our life. Once things had finally settled down, I did have to change a lot of my ratios. So I do remember that experience. By like October, November, I was having a lot more highs because we were being a lot less active. You know, while we were traveling and on the road, we were walking everywhere, or like riding bikes, or just we were constantly in motion. So I really had to reduce a lot of my basal rates and carb ratios, everything. And that was something that we were kind of doing on the fly. So again, this goes back to that preparation of understanding how to make changes just through doing so for so many years, that I was able to make the changes that I felt needed to be made. So the insulin needs while we were traveling were much different than when we got back. So started having highs and had to crank everything back up, since we had then started more of a regular routine where we were at home, we were unpacking things, kind of like the settle down of that trip and a wedding. So yeah, it was interesting how the needs changed, definitely.
Do you have any travel hacks, like things that made getting through an airport easier for you, or, you know, getting from point A to point B with all of your supplies?
Yeah, sure. So definitely, I always keep everything in carry-on with you at all times, just as a safety measure. Because you never know what the temperature under the plane is going to be. You never know how they're going to handle the bags. So number one, I say, is always keep that with you in the airplane. And then I think the biggest thing to make it easy is to have some sort of letter or accommodations letter with you. So TSA especially is getting really good at recognizing diabetes supplies. And I remember 5 or 6 years ago when I'd be going through security, they'd have to pull everything out of the bag and they'd be like, what are all these little vials of liquid? What are these things? What are all these needles? And then I'd have to pull out the letter and explain it. But now I've actually heard people say, oh, it's diabetes supplies. And then they just wave it on. So they're getting better. But there have definitely been situations where they question it and I give them the letter, and then they're just like, okay, go on. Another huge tip is, if you have devices, keep them where they can be seen easily. Because I've gone through security before where I've had like a pod on my thigh, and then they're like, we need to see that. I'm like, well, how do you want to do this? So then you have to go into a separate room. You have to, show it to them. They swab it and everything. So anytime I travel, I always try to keep on like the stomach or the arms with the short sleeve so they can see it easily. And even now, TSA is getting better about that. They don't need to see it. They just ask you to, like touch it, or they wave a wand over it and you're fine. Speaking of security, we have a couple good security stories, because there was one scenario in India that I can think of where we were at a very small airport in southern India. Mostly nobody spoke English, and they didn't understand what we were carrying, the supplies. So we were held up for about a good 15 to 20 minutes, and I had my letter, and this letter got passed around from person to person as they tried to figure out what it said, and nobody could communicate with us. And it was a big mess. Eventually, I don't know if they ever figured it out, or they were just tired of dealing with it. But that was a little bit nerve-wracking because we didn't know what was going to happen or what was going to come out of it. So that was kind of crazy. Another scenario in Nepal where they asked us to take everything out of our bag, and we were holding up a line of people getting on the plane. And in that situation, we basically just said, look, this is diabetes supplies. If we unpack everything, it'll take an hour to put it back. So just let us on the plane. And they were kind of okay with that. Third tip, I'd say, as far as the temperature goes, you never know how long you're going to be traveling sometimes. Frio bags are huge, and that's what we used around the world. There are these bags with little absorbent like polyps inside the lining of the sleeve that you fill with water. So they soak up water, and it works through evaporation, and it keeps the inside of the bag a nice like 60 degrees. So anybody that's traveling for more than an hour, I'd say get one of those to take with you, because you never know what the temperature is going to be like in an airport, on the airplane, how long you're going to be driving sometimes. So get a Frio bag and put everything in there. And we were in southern India where it was 103 degrees at midnight, and we never had insulin spoil because of the bags. So they work awesome. They work great.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I guess I've been lucky that we've never had insulin spoil, at least that I know of. When that happens, can you tell, is it pretty evident, or you just have higher blood sugars than you would prefer?
you're going to have high blood sugars. Like I say, most of the time I get the calls for when kids go to the beach and leave it out. Like that's a very common call of just, man, my blood sugars are just, we're giving boluses and we're not coming down. So it's really that's going to be your telltale. It's just not working.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a little trial and error, because my first thought is, because since I use a pump, it's a bad pump.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you do a couple corrections, you're not coming down, you change the pump, and then if you're still having those issues, then you think back to the insulin. So you're gonna have to work it backwards. But yeah, usually it's the pump and not the insulin. But yeah, definitely the highs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, one thing I forgot to add at the end. If you guys want to connect with me, my wife and I, we took record of our travels on our Instagram page. It's called Living Leashless is what that Instagram's called. I have it written down here. I don't know if you can see that or not, or if it's backwards.
It is backwards.
Yeah. That's
put it in the chat.
Living Leashless. So if you type that in Google and go to our Instagram page, you'll be able to, you can message us, connect with us there, or just look through our photos. We try to do a picture a day. We have a YouTube channel with only a couple videos on it, but we did talk about packing and prepping and what that looked like. So you can check those out. We plan to make videos along the way, but that ended up being a lot more time consuming than we thought. So hopefully more content coming in the future. But yeah, feel free to message us. And we'd be happy to answer and talk to you guys about living with diabetes, travel, just kicking butt as a diabetes warrior, whatever.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that you was talking about climbing Mount Everest and having diabetes and having someone there with you. How is having support helpful? Having somebody that's there. Just because sometimes we feel like the need to have support, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Having somebody with me for that Everest trip and the whole world trip was just crucial. One, like I said, she carried half of my supplies, so it wouldn't have been possible without her in that regard. But she also kept me grounded when things got crazy. She was able to kind of talk me through situations that we were having and brainstorm. When things did go wrong, like the pod dying, we were able to figure it out together, where by myself, I don't know if I would have been able to gather my thoughts as with being able to bounce ideas off of someone. And she would also help me look at patterns and maybe see some different things about managing my blood sugar. But not only that, having like a sidekick or a diabetes partner like that is just a means of security too, because she was there I knew she had glucagon, I knew she could deliver it if needed, I knew she always had low snacks, but having her there as emotional support was the biggest thing. She was always thinking of the next step for me, and I knew that she always had my back if need be. So
and just daily is my daughter is like kind of needy, and I felt, before she was a little needy, diabetes came and we're like, whoa, this little diva. So being there to have her, to give her support, it's important for me to be able to be there for her. And sometimes she just has that emotional, so like you said, that emotional backup is always good. So thank you for talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
She got shy on me.
I'm talking about her.
Uh-huh.
All right, guys. Well, if there's nothing else, I think that's all we had.
This was so great. Thank you so much for tuning in and doing this presentation. It was really interesting.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, y'all take care.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Yeah.